reclaiming deeper learning with traditional knowledge process models, integrating indigenous epistemologies and literacy curriculum. Let's start with the dilemma. Western educational paradigms, which are not indigenous to Africans, have done relatively little good for Africans. After centuries of westernized miseducation, many African communities on the continent and in the diaspora remain marginalized. What is more, the miseducation of Africans has helped to perpetuate Western civilization, using Africans themselves as pseudo-actors within this patriarchal system of dominance and privilege. There's a clash of the worldviews. We have the European worldview and then the African world sense, if you will, but we'll say worldview. Now, the Europeans use pedagogy, and so that is an instructional system based on slavery, rooted in European classical humanism, and founded on the Aryan system of dominance and privilege. Now, pedagogos is derived from the Greek word pedagogos, from pais, or paid, meaning boy, and agogos, meaning guide. So pedagogos is defined as a tutor, a guardian, and guide for boys. Hence the patriarchal foundation. Transmission of knowledge is set up as a banking system, one direction of knowledge delivery. And so in this sense, the teacher is giving knowledge to the student. Now, materialism with no moral basis is huge in this worldview. Power over others, lord and masters, because it's founded in an Aryan system of dominance. It is egocentric, it is focused on the individual, and it is anti-humanism because of its domination, death, and destruction, its use of lies, violence, and terror make it anti-humanism, all linked to the Aryan system. Now, when we look at the African world sense or worldview, that would be a paradigm known as Ubuntugogist. It is an African educational paradigm rooted in African humanism. It is derived from the African philosophy and way of life called Ubuntu, a word from the Southern African Nguni language family. So Ndebele, Swatsi or Swazi, Xhosa, and Zulu, meaning humanity or fellow feeling, kindness. So Mtu, Ngamentu, Ngabantu translates as to be human is to affirm one's humanity by recognizing the humanity of others in its infinite variety of content and form. Now, instead of it being knowledge transmission, this is focused on acquisition of knowledge and knowledge use. And so it happens through a dialogue, a two-direction of knowledge delivery between the teacher and the student. Now, at its root is spiritualism. It is morally based in Ma'at. So materialism is not the focus of learning. The power that it supports is power over yourself in order to help others rather than having power over others. It is egocentric, based on communalism, and it has humanism at its core because it is communal, cooperative, and collective. So the necessary shift from Western educational approaches is important because today Western education continues to transmit the isms that are inherent in patriarchy, the classism, the sexism, the racism. So it continues to transmit those isms. And pedagogy operates on disinformation, selective omission of non-European achievements, inventions, and technologies in academic works, and distorted data that confirms the hypothesis of non-Africanist scholars. And the continuous use of Western pedagogy permits European incursion into African practices and ways of knowing. So we need to shift to Ubuntugogist. And like I said earlier, it is an African educational paradigm rooted in African humanism. 3 tenets of Ubuntugogist include religiosity, consensus building, and dialogue. Now, Ubuntugogist was created by Dr. Abdul Karim Bangura, and he says that Ubuntugogist transcends pedagogy, andragogy, ergonagy, and heutagogy. Bangura submitted, after almost 3 centuries of employing Western educational approaches, many African societies are still characterized by low Western literacy rates, civil conflicts, and underdevelopment. Hence, the salvation for Africans hinges upon employing indigenous African educational paradigms, which can be subsumed under the rubric of Ubuntugogist, which Bangura defines as the art and science of teaching and learning undergirded by humanity towards others. If we take a close look at the first tenet, Bangura uses religiosity. And he says that religiosity would be a better term than spirituality, because spirituality could mean a number of things. But if we look at religiosity, the root of religiosity is religio, or an obligation, a bond of reverence, coming from Latin religare, to bind. So in a sense, we are bound together through a belief system. So to bind together in this case would be through our Africanity, because no matter where we are in the world, we are still Africans. And it's based on being straight, upright, and just in deeds and behavior. And it is going to take the African to restore the uprightness, order, balance, righteousness. And that is through the system of Ma'at. Now, staying balanced in the V of life, as Foucault mentioned in his book, you don't want to get off center, off balance. You want to maintain that balance, harmony, order. And we are all one by way of the human biogenetic rope. So regardless of the racial system that has been set up, this false racial construct, we are all one. We are all humans. The second tenet is consensus building, acknowledging our coexistence. There's no individualism. We all live to serve one another. So in that case, we need to denounce the ego. We need to have a cooperative spirit, make collective decisions, and have genuine motives, not selfish motives, motives that lead to self-aggrandizing acts. We need to share values, interests, and principles, striving for group agreement and harmony, not necessarily the European way of doing democracy. The third tenet is dialogue. And in this tenet, the student is taught to value deliberations. Absence of timekeeping, allowing for extended talk to diminish chaos, is what's important here. We're not focusing on the clock. We're focusing on bringing balance and harmony back. It is a transpersonal communication, connecting with others on a cosmic level, seeing the divine within the other individual. It is dialogue with others to promote trust and understanding. It is dialogue with yourself to promote reflection and intuition. It is a cosmic dialogue that promotes the deep thought. This cosmic dialogue can happen through prayer. And then we have intergenerational dialogue. And this happens with our family, our extended families, our elders, our leaders, our masters, and our heroes. And that includes our children. And then dialogue with our ancestors helps retrieve our collective memory. Dialogue with our ancestors via dreams and memories. So Ubuntugoji brings back the spirit of Ubuntu. A person becomes human only in the midst of others and seeks both individual and collective harmony as the primary task in the process of becoming a true person, a human. Pedagogy fails to teach this as it replaces morality with materialism, keeping individuals in a savage state. The key question here is, what then can be proposed as a literacy curriculum for alleviating the learning poverty crisis beyond 2023? My paper proposes Africanizing the literacy curriculum and retraining African teachers to become Ubuntugogs. Africans must think with our African minds. We must abandon pedagogy and embrace Ubuntugogi. We must Africanize the literacy curriculum, making it culturally specific and culturally relevant to our African heritage. We must seek the intellect, humanity, and spirituality of our students. So, alleviating the learning poverty crisis beyond 2023? Well, Carruthers noted that the victory will occur when and only when African teachers, mwalimus, who have drunk deeply from the deep well of the African heritage, take over the preservation, cultivation, reconstruction, and dissemination of African history, culture, and philosophy as the vital core of African education. So if we look specifically at the literacy curriculum should be Afrocentric. So Afrocentricity is the process in education that seeks to locate or relocate African people and phenomena within the context of African historical and cultural agency. As we know, much of the West has dislocated and relocated or mislocated the African within its information and knowledge systems. So, to bring the agency back to the African, when one interrogates issues of place, situation, milieu, and occasion that involve Black and African people as participants, it is important to look for the concept of agency as opposed to disagency, as mentioned by Molefe Kete Asante. So, agency is the ability to provide the psychological and cultural resources necessary for the advancement of human freedom. Black and African people must be seen as agents in economic, cultural, political, and social terms, and that must come across in the curriculum that we design for our African children. So, the literacy curriculum must include African history, culture, and philosophy. Black and African people must be seen as agents in economic, cultural, political, and social terms. So this could be measured through the rubric of Ubuntugogi. A rubric is a statement of purpose or function, and we can use the rubric of Ubuntugogi to measure the function of an instruction and materials purporting to support African agency. So if we look at religiosity, consensus building, and dialogue, does it fully meet these standards of Africans? Does it advance straight, upright, just deeds and behavior? Does the resource, material, or curriculum or media advance group agreement and harmony, advance deliberations? So these are the things that we look for when we're thinking about adapting literacy curriculum for our precious children. Ma'at must be present in the literacy curriculum. Dr. Leonard Jeffries suggests that we study the spirit of our ancestors through the lens of Ma'at. Ma'at is a Kemetic term that represents the singular whole for the concepts of truth, justice, order, righteousness, balance, and harmony. So when we study the spirit of our ancestors, we need to study their character. We need to study their socializing function, knowledge and skills, and tooling function. How does our ancestors use truth, justice, order, righteousness, balance, and harmony in their character, in their socializing function, in their knowledge and skills, and in their tooling function? And here is a quick talk from Dr. Jeffries.
You see, true education means that there's character development, what I call CD. That's the SF, the socializing function. So your CD and your FS has to be in true education. Alongside CD, character development, as part of the socializing function, your SF, you've got to kick in SD, skills development, which is the tooling function, TF. So your TF and your SD have to be in place. But Africans understood that you do not give persons knowledge and skills and technology unless they have character. Because if you give them knowledge and skills and technology without character, they'll use that for self-destruction or destruction of even yourself. So character is built into the educational process before you even think about transmitting the skills. You see?
So if we were to take a look at a sample resource, and let's say it is a look at Harriet Tubman, we would look at the spirit of Harriet Tubman, and we would use truth, justice, order, righteousness, balance, and harmony. When we look at the character and socialization function of Harriet Tubman, we can see that Harriet Tubman was known for her integrity. She stayed true to her convictions that slavery was inherently wrong and wasn't afraid to communicate this truth to others, even at the risk of her own safety. When we think about justice, Tubman had a strong sense of justice, as evidenced by her risking her life multiple times to help others escape slavery. She saw the injustice of the situation and took it upon herself to correct it, even when it was not her direct responsibility. When we think about order, Tubman was well organized and methodical in her planning of escapes along the Underground Railroad. She understood the need for careful planning and strict adherence to the plan to ensure the successful escape of slaves. Righteousness. Despite the many dangers she faced, Tubman was guided by her strong sense of what was morally right. She resisted the unjust laws of her time, choosing instead to uphold a higher moral law, demonstrating her commitment to righteousness. Balance. While she was incredibly dedicated and passionate about ending slavery, she also understood the importance of balancing her own safety in order to continue her important work. And we could also say that she balanced her family life along with her work because she was able to free her parents. And then harmony. After the Civil War, Tubman used her home in Auburn, New York as a haven for her family and other less fortunate people, creating a mini community where people could live in peace and harmony. So that's under the character and socialization. Now, if we look at the knowledge, skills, and tooling function, under truth, we can see that Harriet Tubman played a significant role in exposing the harsh realities of slavery to the North and the rest of the world. And so under the knowledge piece, she wrote, she worked with a biographer to write a biography. So we could see how she exposed this to the world to keep the truth out there. For justice, her contributions to the war effort helped secure a Union victory and the eventual abolition of slavery, helping to correct a significant societal injustice. For order, she had a weapon for protection and she used herbs to heal. So those were her way of maintaining order as she helped people to escape. For righteousness, Tubman was a devout Christian who believed deeply in the moral wrongness of slavery. For balance, taking on multiple roles as a nurse, scout, spy, and suffragist, in addition to being a conductor on the Underground Railroad, these varied roles display her ability to balance multiple responsibilities and challenges. So that shows her the depth and breadth of the knowledge and skills that Harriet Tubman had. And she worked towards balancing the societal scales that were heavily weighted against African Americans. And then for harmony, Tubman's efforts to lead slaves to freedom worked toward a vision of a society where all individuals, regardless of race, could live in harmony, free from the brutality and dehumanization of slavery. So that is just an example of how we can construct curriculum that brings that morality feature in. And this curriculum is constructed specifically for Africans by Africans, bringing back Ma'at. So the tenets of Ubuntugogi reinforce character development, reinforces that socializing function. Because if you have character, then you're going to socialize and employ dialogue and consensus building. It reinforces skill development because you're going to use your skills to help the community, not to destroy the community or to destroy nature or to destroy yourself. And then tooling functions. You're going to use the tools in a humane and just way. You're not going to use tools to bring about harm. So Ubuntugogi focuses on character development, socializing function, because it is morally grounded in Ma'at. Pedagogy does not reinforce character development or socializing function because it is morally bankrupt. Pedagogy focuses on skill development and tooling functions, leaving out the character and socializing. So this contributes to the learning poverty crisis because it's creating savages, barbarians, rather than humans. So examples of indigenous ways of knowing. We can look at the Dogon people of ancient Mali. And they had these various levels. So they had the Jeriso, the word at face value. Added that this level of perception is without understanding. So Asa Hilliard said that this level is perception without understanding. Now we have the Beniso, which is the word from the side. So this is the stage where the student gains an understanding of viewpoints and begins to develop a perspective. Then we have the Boloso. Now that's the word from behind. At this level, learners begin to exhibit insight into the phenomena being studied. The insight is where we tap into our ancestral knowledge, that knowledge from within. Then we have the Sodai, the clear word. This is where learners develop vision, thus engaging in a deeper learning. This is where Dr. Obatashaka would say we are piping into God's mind. And so that would be the next level, Udunoso, spoken words of the universe, piping into God's mind. So, in sum, the spirit of the African worldview includes wholeness, community, and harmony, which are deeply embedded in our cultural values and absent from Western educational approaches. African indigenous epistemologies appeal to our students while developing their minds to higher levels of thinking and deeper learning. And to alleviate the learning poverty crisis beyond 2023, we must prevent European pedagogical incursion and embrace our African reality. The salvation for Africans hinges upon employing indigenous African educational